The rusty elevator shuddered to a halt, its doors groaning open like a reluctant confession. Isabella stumbled out, clutching a stained canvas bag overflowing with art supplies. She was late, catastrophically, embarrassingly late. Her phone's cracked screen blinked 3:17 p.m., mocking her with its unwavering accuracy. The interview was scheduled for 3 o'clock. She'd promised herself this wouldn't happen. This job, this chance to paint murals for the prestigious stars-aligned kindergarten, was her daughter Lily's only hope. The opulent reception area of Linky Court shimmered, an intimidating expanse of polished marble and abstract sculptures that looked like melted chrome. It was a far cry from the chipped paint and crayon scribbles of Lily's current daycare. Isabella straightened her worn blouse, a nervous flutter rising in her chest. She had to nail this. Lily deserved those shimmering classrooms, those sprawling playgrounds that feature a sharp-suited receptionist, her hair sculpted into an architectural marvel, raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Ms. Rossi," Isabella winced. "Yes, that's me. I'm so sorry I'm late. The traffic. Mr. Sterling is waiting," the receptionist interrupted, her tone as smooth and cold as the marble beneath Isabella's scuffed shoes. "Take the private elevator to the 30th floor. Turn right. First door on your left." The private elevator was a sleek, mirrored box that whisked upwards in hushed silence. Isabella caught her reflection, a whirlwind of frazzled brown hair, smudged mascara, and a desperate hope clinging to her tired eyes. She smoothed down her hair, wishing she'd had time to change out of her paint-splattered jeans. This was Linky Court, the nerve center of Lucas Sterling's empire, and she looked like she'd just wrestled a rainbow. The elevator doors slid open onto a hushed corridor, the silence punctuated only by the rhythmic hum of the air conditioning. She followed the receptionist's directions, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Taking a deep breath, she raised her hand to knock, but the door swung open before her knuckles made contact. He was even more imposing in person than in the magazine articles she'd devoured. Lucas Sterling, CEO of Linky Corp, philanthropist, and a man rumored to be as ruthless in business as he was captivating in the society pages. He stood framed in the doorway, a silhouette against the panoramic city view that stretched out behind him. He was tall, his dark suit impeccably tailored, his presence radiating an almost tangible power. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. His eyes, a startling shade of glacial blue, held hers with an unnerving intensity. Isabella felt a blush creep up her neck, a strange mixture of intimidation and something else, something that fluttered in her stomach like a trapped butterfly. "Ms. Rossi." His voice was deep, resonant, a voice accustomed to command. He glanced at his watch, a subtle gesture that sent a wave of fresh panic through her. "Mr. Sterling," Isabella stammered. "I apologize for my tardiness. The traffic on the BQE was—" He cut her off with a slight raise of his hand. "Please, come in." The office was as impressive as the man himself. Minimalist, yet luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the sprawling cityscape, a breathtaking panorama of steel and glass. A single, starkly modern desk dominated the room, its polished surface gleaming beneath the soft glow of recessed lighting. "Have a seat," he gestured towards a pair of sleek leather chairs. He remained standing, his gaze fixed on her, making Isabella feel like a specimen under a microscope. She perched on the edge of the chair, clutching her canvas bag like a lifeline. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city below. "So, Ms. Rossi," Lucas Sterling finally spoke, his voice softer now, almost curious. "Your portfolio impressed me. The vibrancy, the energy, it's quite remarkable." Isabella blinked, surprised. She'd expected a curt dismissal, a polite but firm rejection. Not this almost interest. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. I try to capture the joy, the wonder of childhood in my work. He nodded slowly, his gaze still holding hers. Tell me, Ms. Rossi, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. What inspires you? Isabella hesitated, unsure how to answer. The truth was simple, raw, and deeply personal. It wasn't some lofty artistic ideal. It was her daughter, her bright, bubbly, irrepressible Lily. The reason she was here, in this intimidating office, facing this impossibly powerful man. Lily, with her infectious laughter and her unwavering belief in magic. My daughter, she finally whispered, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. A flicker of something, surprise, intrigue, crossed his face. He stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking, the air suddenly charged with an inexplicable tension. And what is your daughter's name? He asked, his voice barely above a murmur. Lily, Isabella replied, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her name is Lily. The air in the opulent ballroom hung thick with the cloying scent of lilac and the hushed whispers of the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast a kaleidoscopic shimmer across the polished marble floor, reflecting in the champagne flutes clutched in manicured hands. Isabella, dressed in a borrowed gown that felt both too grand and utterly foreign, clung to the edge of the room, the music a dizzying backdrop to her mounting unease. She'd known this world was alien to her, a stark contrast to the bustling diner where she'd spent most of her adult life. But nothing could have prepared her for the sheer, suffocating pressure of Lucas's family gathering. Lucas, oblivious to her internal turmoil, was across the room, charming his aunts and uncles with the practiced ease of a man born into this world. He looked effortlessly elegant in his tailored tuxedo, his laughter echoing above the murmur of conversations. Every so often, his gaze would flick towards her, a fleeting connection that offered a flicker of warmth in the chilling vastness of the room. But those glances weren't enough to quell the rising tide of anxiety within her. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong. She took a nervous sip of champagne, the bubbles tickling her throat, a stark contrast to the knot forming in her stomach. Every smile felt forced, every polite exchange a monumental effort. She felt like an imposter, a fraud playing dress-up in a life she could never truly possess. The marriage, initially a practical arrangement born of desperation to secure Lily's kindergarten place, now felt like a gilded cage. She'd thought she could manage the pretense, the carefully constructed facade of a happy couple. But the reality of Lucas's world was proving far more daunting than she'd ever imagined. Then, Wenting, Lucas's impeccably dressed cousin, glided towards her, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Her smile was sharp, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. Isabella, darling, she purred, her voice carrying just enough volume to attract the attention of nearby guests. How interesting to see you here. Tell me, how are you finding the transition from greasy spoons to gala dinners? Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. The room, which had been a blur of noise and movement, suddenly sharpened into agonizing focus. Every eye seemed to be on her, their expressions ranging from amusement to hope and disdain. She clutched her champagne flute tighter, the glass digging into her palm. It's different, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Wenting let out a tinkling laugh that grated on Isabella's nerves. Different, darling. It's a whole other universe, one I highly doubt you'll ever truly understand. She lowered her voice, her words laced with venom. Lucas is just amusing himself, you know. Don't get any ideas about your place in this family. You're a temporary distraction, nothing more. The casual cruelty of her words hit Isabella like a physical blow. She'd known, logically, that there would be those who disapproved, who saw her as an opportunist. But hearing it articulated so bluntly, so publicly, stripped her bare, leaving her feeling exposed and humiliated. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows and escape the judging eyes. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. She wouldn't give Wenting the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Excuse me," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. She turned and fled, blindly pushing through the throng of guests, desperate for escape. She didn't stop until she reached the relative sanctuary of a small, deserted balcony overlooking the city lights. The cool night air against her skin was a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere of the ballroom. Leaning against the railing, she closed her eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. Wenting's words echoed in her mind, a cruel reminder of the chasm that separated her from Lucas's world. She'd thought, foolishly, that their marriage, despite its unconventional beginnings, could evolve into something real. She'd seen glimpses of genuine affection in Lucas's eyes, felt the warmth of his touch, but Wenting's words had shattered that fragile illusion, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. The sound of the balcony door sliding open made her jump. She turned, expecting to see Wenting, ready to deliver another venomous barb, but it was Lucas. His face was etched with concern, his eyes searching hers. "Isabella, are you all right?" he asked, his voice laced with genuine worrying. "I saw you leave. What happened?" She hesitated, unsure how to answer. Could she tell him about Wenting's cruel words? Would he believe her? Or would he dismiss it as the petty jealousy of a disgruntled cousin? She looked at him, at the genuine concern etched on his face, and a fresh wave of despair washed over her. Even if he believed her, what could he do? He couldn't change who she was, couldn't bridge the vast gulf that separated their worlds. This charade couldn't last. She couldn't endure the constant scrutiny, the veiled insults, the feeling of being an outsider in her own life. She had to leave, for her own sake and for Lily's. The penthouse shimmered, a modern palace of glass and steel overlooking the city's twinkling expanse. Inside, the air, thick with the scent of lilac and the low hum of expensive electronics, crackled with tension. Isabella Sasha in the original outline, clutching a delicate champagne flute, felt the chill despite the room's warmth. Her reflection in the panoramic window showed a woman transformed. A simple floral dress replaced by a shimmering emerald gown, hair swept up in an elegant chignon, but the anxiety swirling in her stomach remained, a familiar ache. This world of glittering chandeliers and whispered conversations still felt alien, a borrowed dream she feared would shatter at any moment. Lucas Linky in the original outline, her husband, stood across the room, engaged in a lively discussion with a group of investors. He looked effortlessly regal in his tailored suit, his laughter echoing through the space, a sound she'd come to cherish in the quiet moments they shared away from the public eye. Tonight, however, a subtle unease flickered in his eyes, a tension she couldn't quite decipher. Their marriage, initially a convenient arrangement to secure her daughter Lily's place in the prestigious Primrose Kindergarten, had evolved into something more. Stolen glances, shared jokes, a comforting hand on her back during social gatherings. Small gestures that had chipped away at the walls around her heart. She'd started to believe, against all odds, that their transactional beginning could blossom into genuine affection. But tonight, a shadow loomed. Wenting, Lucas's childhood friend and business partner, a woman whose sharp gaze and icy smile had unsettled Isabella from their first encounter, stood too close to Lucas, her hand lingering on his arm a beat too long. Jealousy, a sharp, unfamiliar pang, pierced Isabella's chest. It was irrational, she knew, given the precarious foundation of their marriage. Yet, the feeling was undeniably there, a testament to the fragile hope that had taken root within her. The room's murmur faded as Wenting detached herself from Lucas and glided towards Isabella, her smile predatory. "Isabella, darling, you look absolutely radiant," she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Lucas has truly outdone himself in transforming you." hasn't he?" The undercurrent of mockery was unmistakable. Isabella forced a smile. "Thank you, Wenting. It's a lovely evening." Wenting's eyes, sharp and calculating, held Isabella's gaze. "Isn't it? A celebration of Lucas's latest triumph. A triumph I helped him achieve, I might add." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You see, Isabella, Lucas and we have a history. A deep understanding, something you, with your humble beginnings, could never comprehend." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Wenting's words were a poisoned arrow, striking at the heart of her insecurities. She felt the blush creep up her neck, the familiar shame of her modest background rising within her. Wenting, a voice, sharp and cold, cut through the air. Lucas stood beside Isabella, his expression unreadable. "I believe Isabella understands perfectly. She is my wife." Wenting laughed. A brittle, chilling sound. "Wife? Oh, Lucas, don't be naive. Everyone knows this marriage is a charade, a convenient arrangement. Don't tell me you've actually developed feelings for the hell?" The word hung in the air, heavy with disdain. Isabella's world tilted, the glittering room blurring around the edges. She looked at Lucas, searching his face for a denial, a flicker of reassurance. But his expression was shuttered, his eyes distant. "Wenting," he said, his voice tight, "this conversation is over." He turned to Isabella, his hand resting lightly on her arm. "Come, let's get some air." He led her away from the throng towards the balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air brushed against her skin, a welcome contrast to the suffocating tension inside. "Lucas," she began, her voice trembling. "What she said, is it true?" He turned to her, his gaze searching hers. For a moment, an eternity, he remained silent. Then, he sighed, a sound filled with weariness. "Isabella, what Wenting said is complicated." The words, spoken with such quiet resignation, shattered the fragile hope she'd allowed herself to nurture. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the city lights below. Betrayal, sharp and cold, pierced through her. It wasn't just Wenting's cruel words. It was Lucas's silence, his inability to deny the truth. He hadn't lied about their transactional beginning, but she'd foolishly believed it had become something more. "I see," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. She pulled away from his touch, the gesture small, yet definitive. "I think I need to leave." She turned to go, her heart heavy, the grief that felt disproportionately large for a marriage built on pretense. As she reached the balcony door, she heard him speak, his voice low and urgent. "Isabella, wait." The crisp morning air, scented with petrichor from the previous night's rain, drifted through the open French doors of John's study. Sasha sat perched on the edge of a plush armchair, the worn copy of The Little Prince clutched in her lap, a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. Sunlight, fractured by the leaden window panes, cast dancing patterns across the Persian rug, illuminating motes of dust suspended in the stillness. John paced before her, the tension etched in the lines around his eyes. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. It was a silence fraught with unspoken emotions, the remnants of accusations, betrayals, and the fragile beginnings of something new. The initial, transactional nature of their marriage had been a shield, a convenient arrangement to secure Millie's place at the prestigious kindergarten. Yet, the past few weeks had chipped away at that carefully constructed facade. The orchestrated smear campaign by Veronica, John's ambitious ex-girlfriend, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of driving a wedge between them, it had inadvertently revealed John's protectiveness, his quiet acts of support that had gone unnoticed until now. He discreetly investigated the false allegations, silenced the gossip mongers, and shielded Millie from the fallout. Sasha's heart, hardened by years of struggling as a single mother, had begun to soften, allowing a flicker of warmth to seep through the cracks. John stopped pacing and leaned against the mahogany desk, his gaze fixed on Sasha. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice husky. "I handled things badly. I should have trusted you, confided in you from the beginning. This marriage," he gestured between them. "It started as a means to an end. I won't deny that, but it's become something more." Sasha's breath hitched. She looked up at him, her emerald eyes searching his. She'd seen glimpses of the man beneath the CEO facade. The gentle way he tapped Millie into bed, the genuine amusement in his eyes when she recounted stories of her day, the quiet strength he exuded when facing down Veronica's venomous attacks. "I understand why you did what you did," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. The memory of their first encounter, the stark contrast between her simple life and his world of privilege, flashed through her mind. She'd been intimidated, overwhelmed. Now, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, she felt a pang of empathy. "No, you don't," John countered, pushing himself away from the desk. He crossed the room and knelt before her, his gaze level with hers. "I treated you like a business partner, not a wife. I compartmentalized everything, kept you at arm's length. It was unfair, and I'm truly sorry." Sasha's throat tightened. She'd built walls around her heart to protect herself, to protect Millie. John's apology, his raw honesty, threatened to dismantle those carefully constructed defenses. "I know it's a lot to ask," John continued, his voice laced with uncertainty. "But I want to try. I want to make this a real partnership, a real marriage. Not just for Millie, but for us." He reached out and gently took her hand in his. His touch was warm, reassuring. Sasha's heart pounded against her ribs. Trust didn't come easily to her. She'd been hurt before, let down. But looking into John's eyes, seeing the sincerity reflected there, she felt a flicker of hope, a tentative yearning for something more. What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. John's thumb caressed the back of her hand, sending a shiver down her spine. "It means honesty," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It means communication, trust, respect. It means sharing the burdens, the joys, the everything. It means building a life together. A real life, not just a convenient arrangement." A wave of emotion washed over Sasha. She thought of the loneliness she'd carried for so long, the constant struggle to provide for Millie, the fear of vulnerability. John's words, his offer of partnership, resonated deep within her, stirring a longing she hadn't realized she possessed. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around his. "Okay," she whispered, the word barely audible. "Okay, John, I want to try to." A slow smile spread across John's face, transforming his features, erasing the lines of tension. He squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you, Sasha," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving us a chance." He rose to his feet, pulling her up with him. As they stood there, bathed in the morning light, a sense of fragile hope filled the room. The transactional marriage, the carefully constructed facade, had begun to crumble, revealing the possibility of something real, something genuine, something that had the potential to blossom into a love neither of them had anticipated. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, doubts, and perhaps even more betrayals. But for the first time, they were facing them together, as partners, as equals, with the tentative promise of a shared future hanging in the air. The opulent ballroom shimmered, chandeliers casting a warm glow on the assembled guests. Crystal glasses chimed, a gentle counterpoint to the hushed murmurs of conversation. Sasha, no longer the hesitant single mother who had stumbled into this world, stood posed and radiant in a gown that flowed like liquid moonlight. Her daughter, Lily, nestled beside her, clutching a plush toy rabbit, her small face alight with excitement. Across the room, Linky, his usual stoicism softened by an undeniable tenderness, watched them. He'd traversed a considerable emotional distance since their transactional marriage. He'd learned to see past the initial arrangement to the remarkable woman Sasha was. Tonight, however, wasn't just about their burgeoning love. It was about family, acceptance, and the forging of new bonds. Linky's grandmother, the formidable matriarch whose approval had felt like an insurmountable peak, sat regally in a velvet-upholstered chair, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. The air crackled with anticipation. This gathering, ostensibly a celebratory post-kindergarten registration ball for Lily, was actually the culmination of their unconventional journey. "May I have everyone's attention, please?" Linky's grandmother's voice, though frail, commanded the room's silence. Sasha felt a flutter of nerves, her hand instinctively seeking Linky's. He squeezed it reassuringly, his warmth a comforting anchor. "As many of you know," the grandmother continued, a gaze settling on Sasha and Lily, "my grandson's marriage was unconventional. Shall we say?" A ripple of knowing laughter ran through the crowd. Sasha remembered the whispers, the sideways glances, the judgment that had followed her like a shadow in the early days. "I, myself," the grandmother admitted, "had my reservations." How honesty hung in the air. Thick with unspoken tension, Sasha held her breath. Lily, oblivious to the weight of the moment, tugged at her gown. "Sasha," the grandmother's voice softened, laced with newfound warmth, "when you came into this family, I saw a young woman motivated by a mother's love, a fierce protector, a resourceful survivor." Sasha's eyes welled up. These were not the words she'd expected, not the validation she'd craved but never dared hope for. Linky's grip on her hand tightened. "And what I've come to realize," the grandmother continued, her gaze sweeping over the room, "is that those are the qualities that truly matter. Linky," she addressed her grandson, her voice filled with a rare tenderness, "you've always been a shrewd businessman, but this decision, marrying Sasha, proves you have a good heart. You've chosen well." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sasha felt a wave of emotion wash over her, relief so profound it almost buckled her knees. Linky, visibly moved, stepped forward. His eyes locked on Sasha's. "Grandmother," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you're right. Sasha isn't just Lily's mother. She's the woman I love." The ballroom erupted in applause. Sasha's heart soared. The weight that had settled on her chest since the beginning of this whirlwind journey finally lifted. It wasn't just acceptance she'd found, but love, genuine and unconditional. Lily, clapping her small hands in delight, looked up at Sasha with wide, innocent eyes. "Mummy," she whispered, "are you happy?" Sasha, tears streaming down her face, knelt down and embraced her daughter. "Yes, my love," she whispered back, her voice choked with emotion. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Linky joined them, kneeling beside Sasha, enfolding them both in a warm embrace. The image of their small family, bathed in the warm glow of the chandeliers, was a testament to the unexpected turns life could take. The transactional marriage had blossomed into something real, something profound. "You know," Linky whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of tenderness and amusement, "I never thought kindergarten registration would lead to this." Sasha laughed, a sound that bubbled up from deep within her. "Me neither," she admitted, looking into his eyes, a depth of love she hadn't realized existed reflecting back at her. The music swelled, a waltz filling the ballroom. Linky extended his hand to Sasha. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Linky?" he asked, a playful glint in his eyes. Sasha, her heart overflowing, placed her hand in his. "It would be my pleasure, Mr. Linky," she replied, her voice laced with a newfound confidence. As they glided onto the dance floor, surrounded by the warmth and acceptance of their new family, Sasha knew that this was just the beginning of their happily ever after. The initial deception, the struggles, the betrayals, they had all led to this moment. A moment of pure, unadulterated joy. And as they danced, lost in each other's embrace, Sasha realized that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. The Cinderella story, she mused, wasn't just a fairy tale. It was her reality. The attic air hung thick with dust motes dancing in a lone shaft of sunlight slicing through a grimy skylight. John, Linky's estranged uncle and Isabella's unlikely ally, coughed, waving away the floating particles. He promised Isabella he'd search for anything that might shed light on her mother's past, a past shrouded in mystery, and now tangled in the web of Linky's family secrets. He sifted through forgotten trunks overflowing with moth-eaten furs, yellow photographs, and the detritus of generations past. The attic, a repository of forgotten memories, echoed the state of Isabella's own life before Linky, a jumble of hand-me-down hopes and borrowed dreams. He stumbled upon a small, tarnished wooden chest tucked beneath a tattered tapestry depicting a hunting scene. The lock, rusted and brittle, gave way with a soft click. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, lay a collection of trinkets, a chipped porcelain doll, a worn leather-bound diary, and a silver pendant shaped like a delicate butterfly, its wings inlaid with tiny turquoise stones. John picked up the pendant, its cool metal a stark contrast to the stifling attic air. He turned it over, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings. A small inscription, almost obscured by tarnish, caught his eye. "To my beloved Isa, may your spirit always soar." Her jolt, electric and unexpected, shot through him. Isa Isabella. He looked closer, his heart pounding against his ribs. The butterfly, he'd seen that butterfly before, not on a pendant, but etched onto the back of a small, faded photograph he'd found tucked away in his own mother's belongings years ago. A photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a shy smile, holding a baby girl. A woman he'd never known, but whose face haunted his dreams. A woman his mother had cryptically referred to as the one who got away, the one who, according to hushed whispers, had been deeply connected to Linky's father. Suddenly, the pieces began to click into place with the sickening precision of a well-oiled trap. The hushed whispers, the hidden photograph, the striking resemblance between Isabella and the woman in the picture. It couldn't be a coincidence. He had to show this to Isabella. He had to tell her what he knew, what he suspected. He descended the creaking attic stairs, the pendant clutched tight in his hand, his mind racing. He found Isabella in the garden, her small frame swallowed by one of the wrought iron benches, staring out at the meticulously manicured lawns. The afternoon sun cast long shadows, accentuating the lines of worrying etch on her face. The strain of the past few weeks, the social scrutiny, the constant pressure from Linky's family, and the ever-present fear of her secret being exposed, had taken its toll. She looked fragile, almost brittle, like a delicate flower struggling to survive a harsh winter. "Isabella," John called out, his voice hoarse with emotion. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. He rushed towards her, holding out the pendant. "I found this in the attic," he said, his voice trembling. "Do you recognize it?" Isabella's gaze fell on the butterfly pendant. A gasp escaped her lips, a small, choked sound. She reached out a trembling hand and took the pendant, her fingers tracing the delicate wings, just as John had done moments before. "This," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This belonged to my mother. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. Memories, long suppressed, flooded her mind. Her mother, humming a soft lullaby as she fastened the pendant around her neck. Her mother, whispering stories of a faraway place, a place where butterflies danced in sun-drenched meadows. Her mother, gone too soon, leaving behind a void that Isabella had never been able to fill. Your mother, John began, his voice thick with emotion. He hesitated, unsure of how to proceed, how to reveal the truth. A truth that could shatter Isabella's world yet again. He took a deep breath and continued. Your mother, her name was Isa, wasn't it? Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face. I think I knew your mother, Isabella, John said softly, his eyes searching hers. He pulled out the faded photograph from his wallet, the one he'd carried with him for years, a silent testament to a past he'd never understood. This is her, isn't it? Isabella's eyes widened as she looked at the photograph. Her mother, young and radiant, holding a baby, her. The resemblance was undeniable. The same kind eyes, the same shy smile, and on the back of the photograph, etched in faded ink, a single word. Linky. A wave of understanding washed over Isabella. The hushed whispers, the secrets, the strange connection she'd felt to Linky from the moment they met, it all made sense now. Linky's father, he was her father too. Linky, he was a half-brother. The truth, raw and undeniable, hung heavy in the air between them. The garden, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The carefully cultivated beauty a cruel mockery of the turmoil churning within her. John watched her, his heart aching for her. He reached out and gently took her hand. Isabella, he said softly, I know this is a lot to take in, but I promise you, you're not alone. I'll help you. We'll figure this out together. Isabella looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and gratitude. She squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of his support. The pieces of her life, shattered and scattered, were finally beginning to fall into place. And in the midst of the chaos, a new kind of strength began to blossom within her. The strength to face the truth, no matter how painful. The strength to fight for her future, and for the memory of the mother she'd lost. The grand ballroom of the Chateau de l'Etoile shimmered, a constellation of crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow on the elegantly dressed guests. A string quartet played a delicate melody, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions swirling within Isabella. Tonight was supposed to be her triumph, a celebration of her burgeoning design career, but it felt tainted, hollow. Lucas, her husband, the man she'd married out of necessity, the man who'd slowly chipped away at her carefully constructed walls, was nowhere to be seen. Her stepmother, Veronica, glided towards her, a predatory smile playing on her lips. Isabella, darling, enjoying the party. It's a shame Lucas couldn't make it. Such a busy man, isn't he? The venom in her voice, barely masked by faux concern, twisted a knife in Isabella's heart. Isabella forced a smile. He's attending to a business matter, Veronica. He'll be here. Though the words tasted like ash in her mouth, she clung to the fragile hope. This night, this success, meant nothing without him. Across the room, John, Lucas's estranged father, watched the interplay with a troubled expression. He had witnessed the transformation in his son, the icy detachment melting away under Isabella's warmth, and he knew he couldn't stand by any longer. He caught Isabella's eye and beckoned her towards a quieter alcove. Isabella, he began, his voice heavy with unspoken words. There's something you need to know. He hesitated, wrestling with the decades of silence. About you, and about Lucas, and my daughter. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. John's daughter. He'd never spoken of another child. Your daughter, she whispered, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. John sighed, the lines on his face deepening. Years ago, My wife and I adopted a baby girl. We named her Lily. She was everything. But when my wife passed away, I couldn't cope. I sent Lily to live with my sister, severing all ties. It was a cowardly act, one I've regretted every single day. He paused, his gaze locking with Isabella's. Lily, she's you, Isabella. The words hung in the air, shimmering like the crystal chandeliers, refracting into a kaleidoscope of fragmented memories. The faded photographs of a little girl with bright, inquisitive eyes. The lingering sense of displacement she'd carried her entire life. The uncanny familiarity she'd felt with Lucas from the moment they met. It all clicked into place. A puzzle finally complete. Tears welled in Isabella's eyes. A mixture of shock, grief, and a strange, burgeoning sense of belonging. But why didn't you tell me? Why didn't Lucas tell me? Lucas didn't know, John admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He never knew you were Lily. I was ashamed. I didn't deserve to be a part of your life. Before Isabella could respond, the doors to the ballroom swung open, and Lucas strode in, his face etched with concern. He'd been delayed by a last-minute crisis at the company. A crisis orchestrated by Veronica in a desperate attempt to sabotage Isabella's launch and drive a wedge between them. But he'd seen through her machinations, exposed her lies, and secured his company's future and his own. He spotted Isabella in the alcove with his father, their faces etched with a mixture of emotions he couldn't decipher. He rushed towards them, his heart pounding in his chest. Isabella, I'm so sorry I'm late. There was he trailed off, noticing the tears glistening in her eyes. What's wrong? What happened? John stepped forward, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder. Son, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. There's something you need to know about Isabella. About Lily. He recounted the story, the confession pouring out of him like a dam finally breaking. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft strains of the string quartet. Lucas stared at Isabella, his eyes wide with disbelief. He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek, a gesture both tender and questioning. Lily, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face. It's me, Lucas. I'm Lily. The pieces of their shared past, the unspoken connection they'd felt, the inexplicable pull towards each other. It all made sense now. The transactional marriage, the budding love, the simmering resentment, all transformed by this revelation. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, as if afraid she might disappear. Lily, he murmured against her hair. My sister. My wife. He laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound. This is unbelievable. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. All those years, he said, his voice thick with emotion, we were searching for each other without even knowing it. The tension that had been simmering between them for weeks, the unspoken questions, the guarded emotions, it all melted away, replaced by a profound sense of relief and a love that was deeper, richer, more complex than they could have ever imagined. He kissed her then, a kiss that sealed their past, their present, and their future. A kiss that was a promise of forgiveness, of acceptance, of a love that had finally found its way home. Later, as they stood on the balcony, overlooking the glittering cityscape, hand in hand, Isabella turned to Lucas, a soft smile playing on her lips. So, she said, her voice filled with a newfound lightness, I guess this means our marriage isn't so transactional after all. Lucas chuckled, pulling her closer. Not at all, he whispered, his eyes sparkling with love and amusement. It seems fate had other plans for us. Lily, or should I say, Isabella. He kissed her again, under the watchful gaze of the stars, a testament to a love story that had begun long ago. A love story that had finally come full circle. The Chateau de l'Etoile shimmered around them, a silent witness to their happily ever after.